Hi, I wanted to talk a bit about the state of the UK at the moment. Obviously, the UK's always had its issues, but I think all the issues that have always been a UK problem have really kind of reached boiling point in recent years. The UK is usually seen as a rich country, a first world country. Like our country is the biggest economy worldwide or something like that at the moment. But the problem is, just because the economy is big, it doesn't mean it's got an economy that works. I mean, we think of the Soviet Union, that was a massive economy, but it most certainly didn't work for most of its citizens. The UK is basically, I mean, structurally, it's kind of a poor country appendixed to a rich city in the form of London, and everything within the M25 and some of the home counties like in Surrey and stuff like that. But yeah, although it's pretty poor for young people across the board right now. I mean, if you live in London, at least you can get a well-paid job, but that doesn't. That's not necessarily a guarantee. In the rest of the UK, that's far more off-limited. The opportunities are far more limited. But anyway, the economic rankings that say that the UK is a rich country are calculated from figures plucked from God only knows where by boffins who were, well, they couldn't be more disconnected, more out of touch from what really goes on in this country. You know, I've seen countless examples, like these people have their economics degrees and what have you, but that doesn't mean you're right. It doesn't mean you're right. That's every day I see examples of why that's true. Look, I'm no economist. I've got no pretensions of being such a thing. I don't think I want to be an economist. But, this country couldn't be further removed from what its supposed international standing as, part of the G7 and one of the biggest economies in the world and stuff like that. It couldn't be further removed from what that suggests, Look, it's a really bad country to be young in particular at the moment. In the month I was born, which is 25 years ago, your average salary was about 18 grand per year. So that's pretty. That would be that's an okay. It's an okay salary, I guess. The average price of a house was on average about 76 grand, 77 grand. So that's about 4 times as much as your average salary. So it's not ideal, but your average working person could easily afford a home in their 20s without a shadow of a doubt. Flash forward to now, these figures, obviously the figures I'm going to show you here are reported last month in the Metro. Your average salary for my own age bracket, which is 22 to 30, is about 30 grand. Okay? So that's, yeah. So what's the average house price though? The average house price, brace yourself, this is shocking, it's 285 grand. So that's 9.5 times, almost 10 times as much. So, income has just not risen, especially in the UK, anywhere near close, anywhere near proportionate to what the inflation is. Not even close. Income may superficially appear to be, higher than in what it was, 25 years ago. More than, almost twice as much, But, house prices have quadrupled, effectively. That's not even factoring in the relative price of things like groceries, or that we might want luxuries, like gym memberships, eating out, holidays overseas and what have you, once in a blue moon. Look, in the UK at the moment, it seems anything that's living beyond the bare minimum, unless you have some genius financial plan that's, well exceeds the time or the capabilities of the average Joe, it's next to impossible to pull off, People are always quick to point out the situation in, some of our nearest neighbours, claiming they have a worse cost of living than us. Across the North Sea, for example, from us are the Scandinavian countries. That's Norway and Sweden and Denmark. Everyone, culturally, they're probably the most similar you can get to us in Europe. They have much more in common with us than, I would say, than we have with like the south of France or Spain or Italy or Portugal or anything like that. You know, everyone talks of them as having a high cost of living, and they do, make no mistake about that. But, you know, they also generally get paid more as well. Look, I've been to Norway. Your average salary in Norway, obviously they use the krona there, but it's equivalent to about £40,000, 40 grand in UK money. The average price of a home as of 2022 in Norway is roughly 4.4 million krona, which might sound a lot, and it is, you know, but it works out to roughly 313 grand pounds sterling, and so that's about 8 times as much. So, you know, that's still a better deal than what you get in the UK. I mean, I don't know about specific parts of Norway, but on average that seems to be the case from what I can gather. You know, it's still a massive and out of most people's reach, but there's clearly a case to be made of that the Scandinavian countries, which are almost a cliched example of high cost of living, don't have it as bad as the UK. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's valid to be happy with less. Like, I think it absolutely is. It, like, consumerism is rife in this country. It's like a plague over here, and you know, that's like scams like the Stanley bottles thing, like basically that cult basically proves that. But you know, it's things like having families of our own and home ownership. They're things that our parents, grandparents and their parents and so on took for granted. You know, they're basically privileged to people of my age, and far more so in the UK than almost anywhere in the Western world that I can think of at the moment. Obviously the UK, more so than any other European country, has this culture of dourness and apathy, which, you know, we know that all this nonsense like high living costs, insane taxes, house prices aren't right, but there's this like national I'm alright Jack mentality that like nobody's willing to do a thing about this. It seems they just go about the same mediocre and nihilistic existence, and until every 5 years when they go and vote in the general election and hope some politician will wave a magic wand and all our problems will be gone all of a sudden. It doesn't work like that. Sorry, it doesn't. Politicians aren't going to solve anything here. There's so many reasons why nothing will get better if we rely on politics to solve all of our problems. Like, first of all, I mean, the main thing here is the UK has first past the post voting. And, you know, you can go in, there's loads of, like, detailed videos which explain all about what that means, how that works. But what it really means for us in the UK is, you know, at the end of the day, like, nobody but the two main establishment parties actually win anything. Basically, elections in the UK are just an approval poll for the establishment parties that will win anyway. Like, we had a UK general election about less than 4 months ago, and for me, it's the absolute pits of UK politics. It exposes perfectly just how much this system in the UK just doesn't work. I mean, it's not that Labour won that annoys me, you know, but it's, you know, I already knew Labour would win, but it's like this, you know, Labour won with 33% of votes cast, only 33% of them, which, with the election turnout being 66% of the registered electorate, so that means that only about 19.5%, probably less, of the registered electorate actually voted for them. So, yet they control about 60% of the seats in Parliament. So that's 19% of the country controlling 60% of the political power in this country. And no, it's your right to vote for Labour if you want, but it shouldn't be that disproportionate. It's all I'm saying. You know, this is wrong. It's wrong. That you can't look at something like this and claim that we are anything like a functioning democracy. This, like, was sold in the media as like a massive landslide victory for the Labour Party. It's nothing of the sort. It's anything but. Like, in the 2019 election, Labour under Jeremy Corbyn won nearly 1 million more votes than Labour today did with Sir Keir Starmer, and like, they still lost, and they lost by quite a lot. And this wasn't like, you know, this wasn't a victory for Labour, this election, you know, in 2024. It was basically just widespread apathy against the Conservatives. And you know, in 2019, 76% of the voter turnout voted for the two main political parties. Only 56% of them did in 2024. So people are increasingly disinterested in the main establishment political parties because they're just not listening. They don't do anything for anybody but themselves. But the fact that Labour can still control over 60% of the seats in Parliament with not more than 20% of the backing of the registered electorate confirms that democracy alone can't solve anything in Britain. You know, this country would be just so much better if people, I think, well, this is my opinion anyway, it would be so much better if people just stopped treating like politicians like Jesus Christ, you know, come to save us. They're not. 9 times out of 10, they're in it to make money and, you know, and at the expense of all of us, and like just have an absolute spree spending our taxes on vanity projects, basically, is what it is at the end of the day. That's UK politics. Yeah. The general mood in the UK, I've actually touched on this already. The general mood in the UK is very, very dour. There's this kind of culture of know your place, which contrasts very much so with kind of the more aspirational idea of countries like the United States or Australia. Yeah, there's like a very much a collective lack of a national imagination, I would say. Like in the working and middle classes in the UK, if you've got aspirations beyond what's expected of your social standing, or you don't want to work 9 to 5 conventionally, you're going to be mercilessly and cynically teased. It's just what happens. Like I've been seeing this since I was like 12 or so, possibly before. You know, I wouldn't even say a majority of people in the UK are like that, you know, but it's nonetheless a large enough minority that it creates this very cynical, cold, misanthropic kind of vibe around everyday life in the UK. People are just so antisocial here sometimes. It feels, you know, to the point it feels like the world these days that even striking up a conversation is weird. I've like mentioned that before in different videos, I think. On the rare event that you do actually have a conversation with somebody, all anybody really talks about is like soulless junk, like, you know, studying, work, taxes, politics, everything like that, so on and so forth. It makes a big difference, like, to what I've seen from other countries and what could be. Like, I was in Croatia about 6 weeks ago, and, you know, it's like being on another planet. The people, everybody's really friendly, really chatty, really welcoming, you know, over there, you know. The conversation subjects are more eclectic as well and more life-affirming, you know. You know, it's all like stories of like people's lives, you know, it's discussions of culture, food, family values, love, friendships, having children and hopes and dreams. It's just such a nice atmosphere to be in for the most part. You know, people always try and counteract that by, you know, the fact that we're apparently the 20th happiest country in the world. You know, well, that's because we have an aging population. Most people born between 1945 and 1965 have money. You know, the richest age group in the UK is people aged between 60 and 64. They've got money beyond the wildest dreams of the young people in this country sometimes. You know, they came of age in a time where a few years of work, if that, could buy you a place of your own and you'd be able to afford to start a family and what have you. But look at the happiness stats for the under 30s. Like the happiness index, which is most probably biased towards the West anyway, for under 30s puts the UK at number 34, which is miles behind a lot of countries. It's miles behind Ireland, it's miles behind Croatia, as I've mentioned, miles behind Iceland, miles behind Israel, etc. You know, it's miles behind, you know, Croatia ranked 15th, just for the record, and Lithuania was actually the happiest country in the world for under 30s, out of all of them. So you can see life's getting easier, or maybe it was already easy for under 30s in places like Eastern Europe and that sort of sphere of influence. But it's getting increasingly unhappy for younger people, I think, in Britain and the West. I mean, just look at America. America's even doing worse for us than it, for under 30s and their general happiness, I believe. It's yeah, especially in the big cities, it's a absolute nightmare over there to actually be able to afford to live, it seems. Yeah, I mean, you could comfortably argue that some of these countries discussed, like Croatia and Lithuania, are poorer than us, but I honestly think it's better to live in a poor country with a rich spirit than a rich one with a poor spirit, I would say. And that, even like Ireland, I mean, even they've got massive costs of living with us, but what they don't have, like compared to us, they've got probably worse costs of living, but they don't have this miserable spirit, which is why, last time I was in Dublin, everyone's really friendly, always wants to help you. They do nothing for themselves in Ireland. They'll bend over backwards for you. They'll, you can have a chat with just about anyone. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's definitely a better mood than here, I would say. I mean, people always blame the weather for the bad mood in this country, but Ireland's even rainier than we are, and yet they're somehow happier than we are. They ranked 20th or something like that. 25th, actually, I think it was more like. But yeah, it's definitely this country's not as happy as I believe we could be, I would say. The media in this country too, it brings everybody down. It's so miserable. If you want optimistic news in the UK, you've got to go out and find it for yourself. And if you're looking on like all the mainstream, news outlets like BBC and ITV, you're looking in the wrong place. Like, it's all this warmongering. Like, obviously we've got wars more so than ever on our doorstep in the Ukraine and on the Gaza Strip. There's like nuclear threats, terrorism, climate stuff, and obviously it's important to talk about this stuff, but at least in places like the UK and USA rather, and Australia, the way in which these things are presented in the media are more balanced, I would say. But it's all doom and gloom here. I can't sugarcoat it. We've also got a heavily divisive class system in this country, which creates a lot of snobbery and reverse snobbery. I've mentioned that if you act in a way outside your own social class, it's basically, creates, like, all hell breaks loose. There's so much fighting between these class echelons, and there's so much even infighting within these social cohorts. There's just all of that together just creates a massive barrier to economic mobility. People blame the UK royal family and for the state of the class system. That's nonsense. That is absolute nonsense, I'm afraid, in my opinion. They definitely laid the framework for Britain having a class system in the first place, but the hugely divisive one was actually largely fostered by, in the late 19th and early 20th century by industrialists and the political class. By around the turn of the 20th century, the royals were largely relegated to ceremonial duties as they are now. So, yeah, it's look, taking out anyone who thinks taking out the royal family is going to fix this country in the slightest is absolutely, in my opinion, they're just not thinking straight. In my opinion, just my opinion. I mean, I'm a monarchist personally. If you're a Republican because you just think it's unequal to have a royal family, that's a perfectly respectable view. If you're a monarchist because you like to preserve that tradition of this country, that's a respectable view as well. Yeah, but I think this monarchy versus Republican game, it's a game really. It's just a distraction from like some of the real problems in this country, I believe. So yeah, that's just a bit of my thoughts. I could go into a few other things, but we're nearing 20 minutes now, so that's just a few of my thoughts on the state of Britain at the moment. If you agree, if you disagree, obviously let me know in the comments box. Final thoughts. Do I think it's worth staying here? Possibly not. I mean, I do like lots of things about this country. I love going to I love the countryside. I love the Lake District. I love like North Wales. I love Shropshire and Northumberland and the Brecon Beacons and places like that. The Cotswolds, places, such places as that. And I love lots of little towns like Stratford-on-Avon and Ludlow and Shrewsbury, and such places. But yeah, it's just increasingly become a very difficult place to live for young people, especially. What I was thinking of doing is like maybe trying to work abroad, possibly like getting out of my current situation. I work as a gym instructor personally, and maybe acquiring some new skills and trying to jump on this digital nomad type boat, which has appealed to me for quite a bit. Trying to get some new skills and maybe try and work abroad. I'd quite like to try and see if I could do that in Croatia, if that's at all possible. But you know, we'll see. Just see how that goes. Maybe just for a while. Then, because I've heard you can make quite a bit off that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go full Ollie Dobson here. I mean, he's absolutely great, and I love what he's done. Like, he's amazing. Like how he's like gone over to Thailand and been able to work as a digital nomad. That's outstanding. But yeah, a lot of respect for that guy. A lot of respect for all the digital nomad community. So yeah, but yeah, all in all, this country's just, yeah, it's kind of reached boiling point for me. It's just not, yeah, it's not what it sells itself to be, not what it purports itself to be. It's just not a great country for young people anymore, in my opinion. Maybe you have a different view, but that's my take. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys when I see you. Peace out.